What's up, beautiful people? Welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, this is Bon Book Reviews and my name is Crystal. This is Adeline and today we're going to be doing the first chapter challenge. I have still 11 books on my 22 books that I want to read in 2022. And I need to decide what book I want to read next in that pile, and I just cannot decide. I have Pick Pong coming up soon that I'm going to film, so I'm trying to find which books I'm in the mood for. So what I'm going to do is I have picked 5 books, one from each genre that I usually go for. I'm going to read the first chapter of each, kind of vlog it, what I'm feeling, and then we're going to pick one and read it this week. The rest I will see whether or not I'm interested in them and try and make them a priority in Pick Pong when I play my TBR game next or something like that. But that's what we're going to do in this vlog challenge, whatever we're calling it. So let's see what 5 books I have chosen and what they're about. So first up we have House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. I'm putting this in the horror genre purely because I don't know what else it would fit under other than like fantasy, but I already had a fantasy. So we're going to put this in like the fantasy horror genre. I have heard that this has got really spooky vibes. This is an ARC copy that was gifted to me, but I've heard nothing but good things. She is also the only person I know that spells crystal the same way as me. As for what this is about, let's find out together because I have no idea other than the fact that it is a spooky fantasy horror that everyone said that I need to pick up. When Iris Hollow and her sisters were children, they disappeared on a city street in Scotland. A month later, they returned with no memory of what had happened to them. Ever since, odd, eerie occurrences seemed to follow in their wake. They changed physically as well. First, their blue eyes turned black, then their dark hair slowly turned white. People find them disturbingly, intoxicatingly, unbearably beautiful and inexplicably dangerous. Now, 10 years later, 17-year-old Iris Hollow is doing all that she can to graduate high school, something her 2 famous globe-trotting, glamorous older sisters, Grey and Vivi, never managed to do. But when Grey goes missing, Iris and Vivi are left to figure out the mystery, and they aren't the only ones looking for her. As they brush against the supernatural, Iris realizes that the story they've been told about their past is unraveling, and the world that returned them seemingly unharmed 10 years ago might just be calling them back again. So reading that, it actually, instead of like horror, falls under like potentially like a mystery thriller kind of vibe, so thriller fantasy, but I don't actually have a thriller on this list, so it still works out either way. Next, we have our romance, which is Every Breath by Nicholas Sparks. It wouldn't be a romance chapter challenge without me chucking Nicholas Sparks on here. I had 3 on my 22 books I wanted to read in 2022 for me to catch up on all of his list because I have read every book he's ever released. I own every book he's ever released except for the 3 that are on my 22 books to read in 2022. So I figured it was only fair that I chuck one of these on. I go into these completely blind and I'm going to remain that way. All I'm going to do is read this first chapter and see what it intrigues me enough to continue. I am not going to read the back because I feel like I get a better experience from his if I don't really know what the story is about and who the characters are, because I prefer to discover them along with the book. So hopefully the first chapter is intriguing enough that it drags me in, but if not, that doesn't mean I won't like the book. It just means that it's going to take longer. Sometimes Nicholas Sparks does take a little bit longer to get into the story and make you really like the characters and root for them. So one chapter may not be enough for this one to win the round, but we will see. Next up, we have Kingdom is of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco. This is our fantasy category. Obviously, I do have the other thriller fantasy, but this is just our straight up fantasy. And I, again, know nothing about this other than the fact that everyone says I'm going to love it. I have been procrastinating reading this because of the hype around it, because everyone's telling me I'm going to love it. I don't want to be disappointed, but it has been on this list and I need to pick it up. I have heard I'm going to love Maniscalco's writing, so fingers crossed. We shall see. Now that I've read the back of that, I do remember hearing the preface of this and the whole 2 sisters witches things. I've been really disappointed with witch stories lately, so this one is really going to have to drag me in from like the get-go for it to win this. Next, we have a historical fiction, which is The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. I, again, am going off people's reviews for this. I love historical fiction. I have loved Jojo Moyes' other book. Jess from Biblioberg, who her and I have very similar reading tastes, has loved this and told me I would love this. I managed to get it secondhand, I think for like $2. So I just was like, jumped at the chance to get it, but don't know if it's gonna like win this. England, late 1930s, and Alice Wright, restless, stifled, makes an impulsive decision to marry wealthy American Bennett Van Cleve and leave her home and family behind. But stuffy, disapproving Baileyville, Kentucky, where her husband favors work over his wife and is dominated by his overbearing father, is not the adventure or the escape that she hoped for. That is, until she meets Marjorie O'Hare, a troublesome woman and daughter of a notorious felon the town wishes to forget. Marjorie is on the mission to spread the wonders of books and reading to the poor and lost, and she needs Alice's help. Trekking along under big open skies through wild mountain forests, Alice, Marjorie, and their fellow sisters of the trail discover freedom, friendship, and a life to call their own. But when Baileyville turns against them, will their belief in one another and the power of the written word be enough to save them? Why do I not read the backs of books more often? Because I would have definitely been more intrigued to pick this up if I had read the back of that sooner. But we'll see how the first chapter goes. And our last genre that we are putting up against the rest is a sci-fi, because I have recently become more invested in sci-fis and really enjoyed them, and that is Providence by Max Barry. This one I think is a dystopian sci-fi, if I recall. Yeah, 7 years after First Contact, Providence 5 launches. It is an enormous and deadly warship built to protect humanity from its greatest ever threat. On board is a crew of just 4, tasked with monitoring the ship and reporting the war's progress to a mesmerized global audience by way of social media. But while pursuing the enemy across space, Gilly, Talia, Anders, and Jackson confront the unthinkable. Their communications are cut, their ship decreasingly trustworthy and effective. To survive, they must win a fight that is suddenly and terrifyingly real. I have a feeling this is going to give me Illuminae vibes in terms of like the action-packed, multiple people trying to save the world, artificial intelligence ship kind of vibes. So I am very intrigued by that. Okay, so these are the 5 books that we are pipping against each other. I'm going to go and read the first chapter of each. I will check in with you as I read the first chapter of each and let you know my thoughts and a rating out of 10 as to what I think about the first chapter. And then we will pick one and read it, and I will tell you my thoughts of the whole book. So let's get started. I think I'm going to start with Providence by Max Barry because I am feeling sci-fi at the moment. I have read a lot of romance, contemporary, and fantasy lately, as well as, yeah, like I've done a lot of like romance, contemporary, fantasy. So I'm thinking I want to try it with a little sci-fi to begin with. So Providence by Max Barry will be the one we start with first. Okay, so I just finished chapter 1 of Providence by Max Barry. Now it had like a little like epilogue thing at the start and then the first chapter, so it was actually like 45 pages into the book that I managed to get, and it's been really, really hard to stop and put down. I am so intrigued by this, so interested. The first like epilogue chapter is like the epitome of what I love about sci-fi, and it was really well written. The first chapter kind of introduced us to our 4 main characters, who are the ones that are on the space adventure, and one of them really annoys me, but overall I'm enjoying it, like enjoying them, and I'm excited to see like where this goes. So it's going to be really, really hard to not pick this back up, but it is time to move on to our next first chapter. And I'm thinking, in order to kind of like not mix up characters, not that I feel like I'm going to, we're going to go completely sideways and do a thriller / fantasy-esque one, which is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland, and we are going to do chapter 1 of House of Hollow. Chapter 1 is only 13 pages in this one, so much less of a ability to really drag me in because I'll be getting much less of the story, but that's how it works. Is the first chapters we're doing. So we're going to dive into the first 14 pages of House of Hollow and see if I want to continue it after I read the first chapter. Now, in terms of a rating for chapter 1 in Providence by Max Barry, the epilogue kind of like intro, 10 out of 10. The first chapter, which is like 45 pages, I think I would probably give maybe like a 7 in terms of my intrigue, but because of that first little bit in the story, I'm intrigued to keep going. So maybe I have to like average that out to be like a 8. For the first chapter of this one. I will let you know what I think of House of Hollow. So House of Hollow audiobook is not ready yet. Apparently it's still on hold, which is weird. I thought it was good to go, but no, it's not. So we are going to go to Every Breath by Nicholas Sparks. Now, it is only 13 pages, so if the audiobook doesn't come in soon, I'll just physically read it. But at the moment, I'm doing chores and I kind of need to be listening to audiobooks while she sleeps. So Every Breath by Nicholas Sparks is going to be the first chapter we're going to look at. It also starts with like a epilogue at the start, but the first chapter stops at page 33. So we've got 33 pages to fall in love with this one. Okay, so I've just finished Nicholas Sparks' Every Breath, which is the next book that we did the first chapter of. What the fuck? I'm keeping that in. And I would say that the intro to this, which was the note from the author, probably would have got about an 8 because it was quite interesting, intrigued me, and made me very, excuse you, miss, I don't know if you heard that. Made me quite interested in the story. However, the actual first chapter, which was our first perspective from True Walls, which is the guy from Zimbabwe, I would probably give it like a 5. I'm not very intrigued. I definitely am going to stick with Providence as the one that I'm going to read this week. I feel like this is going to be one of my least favorite Nicholas Sparks books. It just doesn't have the same vibe that I'm used to for him. So we'll be moving on to the next one shortly, which I think is going to be Terry Maniscalco's book, but I'll have to have a look and see what I've got the audiobook for and what I'm going to pick up next. But yeah, definitely sticking with Providence at this point. Okay, so I am going to do Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco next. So we have a prologue and then a chapter 1, which is 18 pages. So that is how far we're going to get into Kingdom of the Wicked to be able to decide whether or not we want to continue it or not. Now, obviously, this isn't about whether or not I want to continue it, it's just whether or not I'm going to continue it out of these 5, like what my next read is going to be. So we will see what I rate this one. Okay, so I've finished Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco. Well, the first chapter. I have to give it like a 5. I'm like intrigued enough that I definitely want to keep reading, but I'm not like, wow, what the hell is going to happen? So yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued and I definitely like the character, the main character that is the sister. And the nonna, she intrigues me. But I still have to go with Providence. And I don't know if it's just because I had so much of that story that I really got invested. But I felt like I was invested from like the first epilogue. So this one, if in orders at the moment, it's probably going Providence, Kingdom of the Wicked, and then Every Breath in terms of interest level. But Providence is still winning. Let's move on to The Giver of Stars. So The Giver of Stars has 28 pages for me to get invested in. Let's see how we go. I may actually get all chapters read today if the baby continues to behave. We shall see. So we are going to jump onto The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes, 28 pages. And then the last one will be House of Hollow, which I still don't have the audio for, but I might just read those 12 or 13 pages or whatever it is because it's not too big to get through physically if the baby is going to stay down. So next up is The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. So it's the next day and I've just finished The Giver of Stars first chapter. It's reading very much like any typical historical fiction. There's nothing like extremely amazing about it, but I do like the main character who is like, she came off as this like pompous person to begin with, but now she's started to get involved in this library project that they're doing. I do like the way that the representation of, I guess you could say like gender role diversity and how it was portrayed back then is being portrayed in this book. It's very like true to form, so I like that. The writing is very visual. I can definitely picture like the area they're living in and everything like that. So I mean, I would definitely continue this book. I am enjoying it. I just feel like I'm more invested in Providence still. But we have one more book left to go, which is the Crystal Sutherland book. So I am going to have to read that physically. I'm just waiting for Anthony to get home with the groceries, and then I will probably pick that up because the baby is currently asleep. So that is what I will do this morning, and then I will let you know which book I pick, and then I will read it and kind of give you my thoughts along the way. But so far, Providence by Max Barry is still winning. Okay, so I managed to finish the first chapter of the Crystal Sutherland book. Interested, but not enough to overtake Providence. So I'm going to continue with Providence, read that, and let you know my thoughts. So I will keep you posted as I get further and further into it. I'm just about to do a reorganization of my shelves because I just watched Rye's Patreon sprints from Rye's Reading Corner, and she did a massive unhaul today. She unhauled like a whole bunch of books. So I'm feeling inspired. So I am going to go and do a bit of an unhaul reorganization of my shelves and listen to the audio of Providence if she allows. We'll see. I might have to put her in the carrier because every time I put her down, she wakes up. I'm in the middle of reorganizing my shelves, moving series, doing a huge unhaul, and I am about 50% into the book, and I have thoughts. It's very much giving me Illuminae vibes in terms of, you know, they're on this ship, they're fighting this crazy alien race. This alien race has these weird abilities. There's multiple different characters. Some of them get along, some of them don't. Like, it's a very sci-fi-esque typical book, but the way that it is written, I am loving. The author writes in a way that I'm just like, I feel like I'm there experiencing it with the characters, which is fantastic. So it's definitely maintaining that, you know, 8 out of 10 kind of rating in terms of enjoyment, and what intrigued me at the start is still there. So I am excited to see where it goes. I have no idea where it's going to go, so we shall see, but loving it so far. So I'm glad that I chose it for one of the books in the first chapter challenge because I knew that I would potentially like it, but I hadn't been reaching for it. So this was the push that I needed.
So it's Thursday night. This video is going up tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. because the baby has just not let me read, and my sister's been here, and it's been really difficult. But I just finished. You can probably hear dishwasher in the background, everything. I'm folding, chaos washing while the baby sleeps, but I just finished Providence. This book, I have not felt this way about a book and reading a book since reading Illuminae. It gave me the exact same vibes of absolutely addictive, holding my breath to the last page, no idea what was going to happen. It was so entertaining and invigorating, and it had such, like, it hit so many different random themes that I didn't expect it to. It's become one of my favorite books of the year, so I am so glad that I did this project. Now, let me know in the comments below if you've read Providence. Also, comment down below what book you think that I should read next out of the remaining 4. Comment which one you think I should read next and whether or not you actually want to hear my thoughts on the remaining 4 books. Do you want to hear them as individual vlogs, or do you want me just to continue to read all 4 and do one vlog as my thoughts? Let me know what you want in the comments down below. Make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I'd love to have you join the fam. And if you have nothing to say about the books or what I've done in this vlog, then you can just leave a spaceship emoji in the comments down below for Providence. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend and happy reading. Bye.